Thanks. So it's great to stand up here and see everyone's smiling faces, and I want to say bienvenidos, mi amigas, from Ajijic, Mexico, originally. Yes, yes, Cassandra and her son Julian. Thank you for being here. So the topic for today, the title is called Traveling Down a New Road, also known as Something Greater is Trying to Happen. Sometimes things come out of the blue and, it's like, what? Okay. But you go with the flow. And that's kind of what the talk is about today. I want to talk about that because we own a small condo in Waikiki, and the tenant left, and we decided we would go on to Hawaii for a while. That's where I became a practitioner at the Religious Science Church of Honolulu. So kind of have my spiritual roots there. And I'm really happy to invite you all over there for hula and the breeze and the beach.
And not all at the same time.
So, I just want to say thank you, and thank you for this wonderful celebration today. And over 3 years ago, I was teaching at Carlsbad, Chapala Center for Spiritual Living, and I was also taking a class through CSL. I happened to call Reverend Kate because she had been the teacher of Robert for his practitioner studies. So I was talking to her, and I think I mentioned, well, we're going to be coming back to Oceanside. Do you need a part-time speaker? Well, it just happened she did, and she sent me what was called a letter of call. And I don't know if you're familiar with that. The ministers are, because when you are called, you sign a contract called a letter of call. And so April 2022, I arrived here, and it's been amazing, just an amazing trip, an amazing and joyful experience. And at the same time, that what I call the river of consciousness is beckoning me to expand my sight, my consciousness. So today I'm going to talk about unity. I'm going to talk about calling. How are we called? How do we listen for the still small voice? And also change. I know some of us don't care for it, but we know what religious science practitioners do with change. We leave it at the little bowl at Starbucks, the tip jar. That's what we do with change. So I just want to thank everybody. I'm going to miss you guys. And thank you for laughing at my jokes. Speaking of which, I have a few for you today. I may have told this one before. There was this devout old shepherd out in the fields with his sheep, and he lost his favorite Bible while he was trying to find a wayward lamb. Well, 3 weeks later, a sheep walked up to him with a Bible in its mouth, and he couldn't believe his eyes, and he took the book out of the mouth, and he said, "Oh, it's a miracle, it's a miracle." And he gazed heavenward, and the sheep said, "Well, not really. Your name is written on the inside cover." And I have a couple of these church bulletins. You ever read church bulletins? I mean, Freudian slips. This one said, "Attend the fasting and prayer conference this Saturday. Meals included." I like this one even better. At the evening service tonight, the sermon topic will be, "What is hell?" Come early and listen to our choir practice. Okay, here's another good one. What to say when you get caught napping in an event or at your desk. And so it is. Amen. I have one one more. I have to show you this one because some of you know Edwene Gaines. I think she pronounces it Edwene. And I've heard her speak before, and she wrote a book on prosperity. And she said, and this is a true story, she said when she was in the seminary, the finances were very tight for her and her teenage daughter. And she said they were practically starving. And her daughter was quite upset. But she said, I told my daughter, have faith. God is so great and will provide. And I would pray about it. And I would have these heartfelt talks, and I'd say, okay, God, I need you to come through for us. Well, lo and behold, one day a clerk from the local grocery store called her and said, you just won a certificate for $100 of groceries. Oh, she was so elated that she ran to the next room shouting to her daughter, see, I told you, God has provided. God is so great. And her daughter looked deadpan, said, great nothing. I stood there at the grocery store all afternoon filling out 100 entry forms. Well, we never know how a blessing can come to us. But great daughter, My mother would say, God helps them who help themselves. But in religious science, we say, treat and move your feet. Pray and do something about it toward that goal. So I wanted to thank Robert for the reading because it's true. Nature will not let us stay in one place too long. For change, we have to listen. We have to listen to that still small voice within us, and we have to accept change. In religious science, just what Kate said in her prayer earlier, we teach that the whole universe, it's all spirit. Everything is spiritual. And it's all God. And we're all connected to this one presence. And we deal with change, and we have the courage to follow our calling. By knowing at all times we're supported. We're one with spirit. All the attributes of spirit are ours. God is unlimited. I am unlimited. You are unlimited. God is creative. I am creative. When we really understand that, you understand you are the face of God. You are magnificent. And didn't Jesus say something like that? Don't you know that you're God's? Yeah. So I've talked about unity in the past, but we can't talk about it enough. It's the basis of everything. All mystics have sensed that we live in the one life. Now, you may have read the teachings of Buddha or Joshua ben Joseph, also known as Jesus, or Rumi, or Plato, or Socrates, or Aristotle, Plotinus, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Yogananda, Walt Whitman, Robert Browning. Well, they all say the same thing. We find the same truth, one consciousness. We're one with God. We're one with the whole. And the Spirit of God is embodied in us. Every time we conceive of an idea, we may think it's us, but it's God. It's God expressing itself through us, in us, as us, in this form. Ernest Holmes tells us, he says, that which is infinite cannot be divided. The whole of God is present in any and every point within God. It's all God. And we have a little saying in religious science, there's no spot where God is not. But when we realize our unity, we consciously create more good. We turn away from faulty thinking and negativity. We turn to our good, our God. We listen for intuition. And that's what Robert and I are doing. We're listening. We're listening to guidance to further our calling on this planet in this lifetime. And I like to say I have my radio set to FM God. I watch. I watch for things to unfold, sort of as a sign. So, oh, stuck together. I think in the past, well, I love teaching science, and thank you for letting me teach metaphysics and quantum physics in the past. It's been great because by teaching it, you understand more about it. And science and spirituality walk hand in hand. I think they're finding out in science what many have known throughout the ages. And I've said before, you're all made of star stuff. You know, when a star goes nova, it creates from a basic element called helium, which then becomes, is it hydrogen? And then it basically compresses and becomes so hot that all these additional elements are formed, and they make the basis for your body. Oxygen, calcium in your bones, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, sodium, iron. You're all from a star. So I wanted to tell you a story I thought about this week. I enjoyed this story as a child. It's a story in the Old Testament about a little boy named Samuel. And Samuel, his parents or his mother gave him over to the church, to the temple, to, live basically, and to follow in the footsteps of other great rabbis. Well, what happened was there was an old rabbi named Eli, and he was falling asleep, and little Samuel was lying down, and the Lord called Samuel. He said, Samuel, Samuel. Samuel said, here I am. And he ran over to Eli, and he asked the old priest, he said, here I am, you called me? No, I didn't call you, go back and lie down. So he went, and he lay down, and the Lord called him again, Samuel, Samuel. Samuel got up and he ran into Eli again, and he said, well, here I am, you called me. I did not call you, my son, go back and lie down. So the Lord called Samuel a third time, and we know 3 is a metaphysical number for completion. So the Lord called Samuel. Samuel went into Eli, and he said, well, here I am, you called me. And Eli realized then, no, the Lord was calling the boy. And Eli said, go lie down. And if he calls you, say, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. So Samuel went and lay down and started a dialogue with God. Mm-hmm. And the 3 implies there is effort. Sometimes we don't get it quite right. Try it again, 3rd time's the charm. But in this case, he's listening and he's hearing and he's saying, yes, I'm here, I'm listening. He's here for God. So, any of you play in an orchestra in your life? I used to play in an orchestra and a band. We know some of us. Well, it's kind of like finding your calling when you play in an orchestra. It's because it's like a cosmic orchestra. Your gift joins with others in this lifetime, and you perform something beautiful. So have you listened to the still small voice, that little voice within you? And do you acknowledge your intuition or your gut when something happens and you go, oh, wow. Or just synchronicity, something happens and you go, oh, well, that was fortuitous. It's spirit in action, in you, through you, calling you. So what is it telling you? Are you looking for a new job? You're looking for a new career, new friends, new diet, new ways of loving yourself and others? Listen. New beginnings are often disguised as a painful situation. I mean, it is bittersweet leaving here. It's not that it's painful, it's soulful. But change is never painful. Resistance is painful. So like we say, let go, let God. No need to be afraid something greater is trying to happen. I always like to say, God's got my back. When I was in Ahihik, I met a minister named Raymond Anderson. He's dynamic, amazing guy. Remember Raymond? He said, whatever we have that we call our gifts, our talents, our skills, our blessings, we are called to bring into the world. We are called to be the living embodiment of our spiritual magnificence and live it out loud. Don't hide it under a bushel. Remember, you're one with an unlimited universe. Your mind is God's mind. The creativity of the universe is yours. You're a drop in the ocean. And the drop of water in the ocean has everything that the ocean has, all those attributes. And you have within you strength and patience, courage, unlimited resources, and passion to fill your calling, to answer, to say yes. Ralph Waldo Emerson, we all know, he said, write it on your heart that every day is the best day in the year. Tomorrow's a new day. Begin it well and serenely, with too high a spirit to be encumbered with your old nonsense. You know what we say, the past is history, the future is a mystery, the present is the present, the gift. He says, this new day is too dear with its hopes and invitations to waste a moment on the yesterdays. So do you have anything unfulfilled in your heart? Do you have anything there that you want to feel, you want to see? Sometimes people are afraid because they feel like they're losing something, you know? I don't want to feel that I'm losing all of you. I'm going to make new friends and more friends and invite you along. But when you understand that your life and the history of the universe were written by the same hand, you know, same power, no reason to be afraid. Spirit wants to live fully, and dive into a strong life current that will carry you places that you may not have been fully aware of. Speaking of which, I have a story here I want to tell. Some of you have heard this story before because I got the second chapter from your husband, Dr. Tom Sammer, some time ago. But this is a story from this book, Richard Bach. And he wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull, but this one is called Illusions. And on the inside, he writes out a little story here about a water bug, the liberation of the water bug. And what Tom and Jack Boland did was they wrote another chapter. So I'm going to read this to you. The liberation of the water bug. But you can read it in Richard Bach's book too. Once there lived a village of water bugs along the bottom of a great crystal river. The current of the river swept silently over them, rich and poor, good and evil, young and old. Sometimes the current was strong and swift. When that happened, the little bugs would dig down into the mud in order to survive. Sometimes the current was so soft and gentle, the bugs would come out and cling to the rocks along the bottom. So their way of life was digging in the mud or clinging to the rocks. They were taught that the way to survive was to resist the current. One day, one little water bug said to the others, well, I'm tired of the mud, the digging and the clinging. I shall trust the current, even though I can't see it with my eyes. You can't see current. I shall let go and let it take me where it will. Clinging, I will die of boredom. Well, the other water bugs laughed and called her a fool. If you let go, the current will smash you against the rocks and you'll die. There are new self-help books out there. How to cling in spite of it all. Learning to love the mud. Read them and be content. But this water bug did not heed their warning. She felt a deep calling, a deep desire. And she proclaimed it, and taking a deep breath, she let go. And the current took her away. And she tumbled and was smashed against the rocks, but water bugs have thick shells, so in time she was released from the bottom. The current lifted her up, and she was bruised and hurt no more. She refused to cling again. And she passed over other water bugs downstream, and some of them hid, and some of them were marveled. Wow, she was floating with the current. It's the Messiah. She floats without effort. She's a water bug, yet she flies. Walks on water, huh? No. She said, I'm no more Messiah than you are. Well, you can do what I'm doing just by releasing and letting go. The river delights in setting you free. She said, if only we would dare to let go. What our true work is this voyage, this adventure. But they wanted a savior, and they clung more tightly, and they made up stories and legends and holy books, and they went back into the mud. So finally she came to a place in the river. This is the second chapter. When the current was very gentle, she met other water bugs who had taken the same journey, who had been willing to risk and let go. They had moved out of a two-dimensional mud, and they were free floating. They allowed the river to nourish them, let the water flow through them. They simply found that if they opened themselves to the river provided. So she rested. She told stories of her journey. And they formed groups and studied books. How to float in spite of being a water bug. The 12 steps of water bug consciousness, etc. So one day she was floating and she saw a stem. She didn't know what it was. It was from the bottom of the river, and it seemed to disappear as it went up. And she asked the others, what is that? They said, oh, don't go near that, don't go near that. There was once a water bug who crawled up that stem. We never saw him again. Well, despite the warning, again, she felt this deep, deep calling. And she began to climb the stem. Finally, she came to the top, and she entered a new environment, a new dimension, something she couldn't describe, something she had never felt before. She felt a new and different kind of current. It began to warm her. She was on a lily pad, and the gentle breeze was caressing her, and the sun was warming her body. And she laid there in peace and serenity, contemplating the goodness of her new dimension of life. Something began to happen, though, with her body, and the cold, hard shell that had encased her began to crack. She was frightened at first, but it seemed like her body was falling apart, and as the crusty shell began to break open, she felt an inner movement, a trembling. A beautiful net-like wings began to expose themselves in the sunlight. She lay for a few more seconds, merging in the majesty of her new life, incorporating her consciousness into a new body. And then she began to experience herself rising, feeling the air mingling with her new wings. Before her very eyes, she saw herself being transformed into a glistening green dragonfly, flying out into the morning sky. So, I love that story because it is a metamorphosis, and we all go through it. We all go through a metamorphosis. I wanted to read to you a quote from Charles Fillmore, the founder of Unity Church and the Metaphysical Teaching. He said this when he was 92 years old. He would get up in the morning And he would say, I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and leap forth into a mighty faith to do that which is mine to do. Mine to do. His calling. So we live in a time that calls us to expand, to fling ourselves into life. This is what he said. With creativity and zest. We are invited to be sparked by the primordial fire from which we came. We are to become flames of love that burn away fear and bring forth warmth and compassion to all creation. So one last quote before I wrap this up. She's an interesting writer. Her name is I don't know what the A stands for. Helwa, Helwa. She's an Islamic writer. And she has 2 great books called The Secret of Divine Love and From Darkness into Light. She says, like snowflakes, we all come in different shapes with a unique mission on earth. No matter what your calling is, the world is depending on you. Existence is a puzzle. Without you in it, it would be incomplete. Now's the time for you to step into all that you know you can be, but have been afraid to become. So I just want to say, before I get teared up here, I love that poem by E. Cummings. I carry your heart. I carry your heart with me. I carry it in my heart. I'm going to miss you all. And I just want you to look at the person next to you and see the divine. Look at the divine in the person next to you. Now, look at the person sitting in your seat. Look at that divine. And thank you all. Thank you for the love. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the laughs. It's been great. And the last thing I want to say is keep on talking to God. It's okay if you talk out loud. Keep on talking to God. Something greater is trying to happen. Just say yes. So it is.